Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, December 4th, 2018.
That's Mike Agello, and I am Peter Tessier.
Well, no, I'm the host, so I don't have to say till the
All
last.
right. Well, I'm Peter Tessier in Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen on location.
You stole my line. And I'm Michael Agello, and it's so nice. They mentioned me twice. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, we're going to start with we have a lot of stuff to cover because we didn't have a show yesterday. I was up in Toronto at the William Nylander press conference, and there's been a lot of news going on over the last few days. So we'll cover the most recent stuff first and then work our way back. Today at the Board of Governors meeting in Sea Island, Georgia, the city of Seattle was awarded the 32nd NHL franchise. They will be entering the league in 2021-22. So apparently they could not get the Key Arena ready until April of 2021. So they'll start in September of that year. Peter, you were talking to me about the viability of Seattle. It sounds like the NHL is sold on it. You're not as much.
I've always been a skeptic for a lot of reasons, in that Seattle's sort of a funny town. They're huge into baseball, huge into football, and huge into soccer. And you know what? When they had their basketball team, so you throw that in together. Yes, it's a wealthy town, but Seattle's kind of a lot like Vancouver in certain aspects of fickleness. You either sort of have to be someone from there who's grown up with things and you've made an attachment to it, or you've got year-round outdoor fun to be had at your hands, even though it rains a lot. And it's weird with that. People tend to want to do things outdoor. They tend to get sucked away from stuff. So football's an easy one. It's only 8, 9, 10 games a season, right? Easy to commit. Soccer's through the summer when the other, the main other sports other than baseball is going on. Their buildings are next to each other. This one, where the Key Arena is right now, it's in a neat area by Seattle Center, but it's not the easiest place to get to. There's no parking anywhere, and it's right next door to a residential neighborhood. It's a beautiful area, but it's not very convenient for hosting something. It's different.
Is there rapid transit?
Well, they have no real rapid transit. The rapid transit they have is the World Exposition monorail that goes basically to where the Experience Music Center is by the Space Needle and goes downtown.
It goes like 12 blocks. It's the biggest.
Yeah, it doesn't go very far. It's not an efficient people mover. But I've just always been a skeptic. And the one thing I said to you, Mike, before we went on is I said, I think it can work. Now I'm a little less skeptical than I used to be, but from a numbers point of view, if it's going to be another situation where tickets are going to be given away or they're priced way under where the market value is, then the NHL sort of brings a big $650 million bump to them, but they're just giving some other problems down the line. And, hopefully that doesn't happen, but I've never been big on Seattle as being a successful hockey market, but I'm totally happy to be wrong.
Russ? You know what? Here's what there are a lot of transplants, and I think at the end of the day, we're possibly looking at that more than anything, because I know people that have been transplanted there. They're from Montreal. You got to remember, with all the gaming companies there and Microsoft and such, there are a lot of people that didn't grow up there that now live there that love hockey. And so I think they're going to be calling on some of them. Obviously, some people will cross the border when they can't get Canucks tickets to go see some games. If they could get a marquee player right out of the gate, that would be a good thing, because then there would be a reason for those people to cross the border to see, because, Canadians will go and see a player. The interesting other part about this whole deal is, like, I've gone to Jekyll Island, Georgia, like 3 or 4 times. I love where the NHL tries to pick the most remote places for their Board of Governors meetings, so the media might not be able to follow them. And if they do, well, they'll be out on the golf course anyhow.
Right. Just a couple things here. $650 million for the expansion fee. That's 150 more than Vegas. Vegas will not. Yep. There you go.
It costs more. How do they justify that, though? To be honest, what is the difference between Vegas and that it needs to cost 150 more.
It's because Vegas went to the Stanley Cup final the first year, and the expansion draft model worked.
Right, and they're going to use the same expansion draft model as well, but Vegas will not be taking part in it. Apparently, they are exempt because they're an expansion franchise.
Yeah. Hold on. See, now that's not entirely fair because they had the same chance as anybody else to win the Stanley Cup last year. They should have to take part in this.
And when's the expansion draft happening? If they're not coming in until 2021, 22, that's 2 years away.
Yeah,
they've been in the league for 4 years.
Yeah, it'll be June of 2021. If they're following the same model, it'll be a couple days before the 2021 draft. So
2 years away. I mean,
yeah. So two and a half years away.
There's going to be some teams making some, like, we got 2 years to worry about this, but imagine the decisions that are going to be made around this expansion draft after what was learned last time.
Well, Russ, they were making this point on Toronto radio because they were talking about the Leafs, and they were saying, well, in the expansion draft for Vegas, the Leafs were coming off that they had Austin Matthews in his rookie year. He guys like him and Nylander didn't have to be protected. A lot of their young players in the minors didn't have to be protected. That's not going to be the case in 2021 because all these players are going to have experience. They're likely going to lose a good player, and I don't think teams are going to. We've talked about this with Kevin and with Eck. I don't think there are going to be teams out there that are going to be making contortions and doing the moves that they did to protect players to not be picked by Vegas because Vegas in the end benefited from those.
I think there won't be the large majority like last time, but let's face it, there's going to be one or two because there are teams that always feel like they could outsmart the system, even in the end the system outsmarts them. So I still think there'll be a couple, but not as nearly as many as last time. I got to recharge my battery. Give me 1 second.
There we go. He's recharging his battery. I think it's just me talking, Mike. You're on mute. No one can hear you, Mike.
I muted myself.
Yeah.
I was trying to mute Russ and I muted myself. Yeah, so some other people wish they could mute me.
Yeah, there you go. So
now
go ahead.
No, I was just going to finish out with this because I'm sure more information is going to come out about it. But the one thing is that Seattle will go into the Pacific Division, and Arizona will move into the Central. And this is the thing. I had seen some commentary. Yeah, your video had cracked out too, so probably the power saving had. Arizona is moving to the Central, and I saw some commentary on this on Twitter, and from what it sounded like, it sounded as if the Arizona Coyotes were not too happy about being moved into the Central. Now the California teams won't be coming there, and Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. I'm sure McDavid would be a draw there, but now they're going to be getting Dallas and Chicago, St. Louis, Minnesota, Winnipeg. I mean, it affects their rivalries too.
Yeah. It was funny. Like it's a double-edged sword with this thing. I mean, if you really want to create something fun, you'd send Colorado to the Pacific and you'd move Edmonton and Calgary into the Central. How really make a mess of things in the Central with those guys on the rise.
You can't separate Edmonton and Calgary. You have to keep those two together.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You send Colorado over to the Pacific.
Yeah, I think Colorado wouldn't like that too much.
No, not at all. Why? They might actually get out of the Central.
Yeah, I mean, direct flights.
That's ebb and flow, though. I mean, that's
direct flights from Denver to LA, Denver to San Jose, stuff like that, I guess. But
yeah, I think it's funny. I think you brought up something that if I think we've got a bit of I don't want to say time bomb, but there's a clock ticking in Arizona about what's going to happen with that franchise, and whether there's going to be, a new arena in downtown Phoenix, not out in the middle of nowhere in the giant suburban haze that is the greater Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm.
And if that can't get agreed upon, I think, the name you mentioned before we went on air, Mike, is Houston sitting there ready. And that makes a lot more sense to do that. And frankly, I think, from a travel standpoint, it's way harder for Canadian teams to travel than it is for American teams. And Arizona is not far off the beaten path as they might like to think. And let's remember, for 2 seasons, the Jets played in the Southeast Conference, in the Southeast Division.
Right.
I mean, it was ugly, and it can be done.
Yeah. The other team that seems to be in flux right now is the Ottawa Senators. I'm just touching on this because we were touching about Arizona, and Bettman made comments about it yesterday, saying he's not exactly happy about the Ottawa Arena situation, the LeBreton Flats situation falling apart.
He said disappointed. When you get Bettman to say disappointed about a team that's possibly moving,
right,
that's really bad, because he tries to temper that.
Right, and that's why I'm bringing this up, Russ, because you and I mentioned this almost at the same time on our Twitter conversation, or our text conversation, is that there's a brand new building sitting in Quebec City, and maybe they'll use it as leverage. That the NHL is not above doing that, but I'm telling you right now, with the partner in the LeBreton Flats development, basically starting his own, he's building his own condos, which is sort of undermining how they're going to finance the building. And there's a lawsuit going on between Eugene Melnyk. Eugene Melnyk owes the city of Ottawa absolutely nothing. Right now, all he's trying to do, I think, is unbury himself from financial trouble.
The city of Ottawa owes Eugene Melnyk nothing.
Well, I think it's vice versa too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to get involved in that family spat, but basically what I'm saying is, if Eugene Melnyk can get a financial windfall by selling that team and then moving to Quebec City, he'll do it as long as he has NHL support. He'll do it in a red hot minute. And maybe Bettman is going to use this as a scare tactic, Russ. But I think it's viable that could happen if this thing continues to just decompensate.
I mean, I think some of the scare tactic has to go into the fan base. I mean, they're the ones not showing up. I get that stuff went on that they didn't like, but if they were supporting them the whole time and they were still selling out, they wouldn't have half the financial problems that they have.
Well,
but
Canada is an absolute disaster. I mean, what is it, 20 kilometers outside of Ottawa, and you have to drive down one stretch of road? It's just stupid.
And then they're charging exorbitant parking fees and stuff. I mean, Russ, maybe the warning shot isn't to the fan base, but it's to Melnyk himself, because this guy's been nothing but, under his leadership since the Sens went to the Stanley Cup final in 2006, they have been nothing but a train wreck. Or 2007 is when they went, right?
I can't
and like, as a franchise, nothing but problems. And right now it's just basically hopping from one disaster to the next. It's one PR disaster, one fire. And Melnyk, he's running lines of credit to fund this thing. He's taking out emergency loans because he doesn't want to stick his own money in it. And these things slowly seep out each time. I mean, Gary Bettman, I mean, for all the things that he does to protect franchises and move them, when things become an embarrassment, he gets rid of the embarrassment.
Okay, but I don't think it's gotten to the point of embarrassment. And actually, they are still loaded with prospects, and guys are coming up as we speak. So I don't even know if they're going to be bad for that long. They are bad right now in the interim, but they're actually still pretty talented. I think they're going to eventually turn the corner. The issue is, yes, you were right. Canada's a bad thing. When you drive out there, you just feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you see the stadium, the arena. The other thing is, though, I don't think they have ownership just lined up in Ottawa to buy it from Eugene Melnyk. I think that's the other problem. It's like be the capital, but it's capital hockey in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and I've heard this said before, is that Ottawa is a government town and you don't really have a large number of, I mean, the Ottawa Valley is fairly populous, but it's not, you've got people from Toronto and Montreal and from all over the country, and there's not a dedicated fan base there. I mean, we've seen for playoff games, for conference final games, 4,000 seats empty. This is a team that was, so I honestly, I know that there are,
like there's a cheaper option too. Gatineau's right over the bridge. I mean, not. It's not there.
You're
Gatineau for a lot less too. There is some, that does probably take away from a certain amount of fans too.
Yeah. All right. Let's move off of this to the fun of the weekend. And I was up in Toronto yesterday, and I'm sure Ak, if he was here, would be celebrating the fact that we're not going to be mentioning William Nylander every day anymore. But I would hold on to your notes on William Nylander, because it's my belief that next summer, when it comes around to July 1st, that we may see that name pop up again. And the reason I bring that up is the resolution to the whole impasse was done about a half hour before the 5 o'clock deadline. It's a 6-year deal. The AAV on it is $6.9 million for next year and the years forward. Now, because of this CBA clause that basically allows teams to, or makes teams sort of front load the deal, or the ability to front load the deal and lower the cap hit going forward. His cap hit this year is a little over $10.2 million. But prorated, it's around the 6.9 that he's getting paid for the other years. That will still leave the Leafs a lot of cap space, over $5 million, plus the LTIR of Nathan Horton to open up space at the deadline. And I asked Kyle Dubas yesterday at the arena whether they would go out and add players, and he basically said, "Yeah, I mean, we're going to use the cap space. I'm going to write about it in Hockey Buzz a little later on." But to Nylander, this is the funny thing, guys. I want you to react to this. William Nylander said, "I was promised by Kyle Dubas that I will not be traded while he is general manager." Kyle Dubas came out and said, he acknowledged that he had said that, but then said, "We are going," and the quote I have, and I'm just paraphrasing here, "we will keep William Nylander as long as we possibly can."
Right.
As long as we possibly can, could be as soon as next summer.
There's other quotes to say Nylander said Dubas told him as long as he was GM, he wouldn't trade him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is the only time I like a GM being direct and to the point and making a statement about a player is when Brian Burke says, "I'll drive him to the airport," because that's because if you don't do that, you at least haven't put yourself in a position where you look like a liar eventually, or at least something big. I don't doubt
that position at some point. Like, I don't hold a GM to everything he says, because if I did that, I mean, that would be a tough place to go, Peter.
Yeah. I mean, I think other players, every agent, if William Nylander gets moved, is going to say to your person, say to their client, remember this, he gave up 2 months of this guy to sign a deal that it could have been signed in August. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. What a colossal waste of time this was to agree to that deal. Why couldn't this have been done in September? Like, come on. This is, I mean,
that's what's going to get him traded. I think I heard 2 great things. On Sirius XM, Scott Laughlin said that he termed William Nylander as the greatest 20-goal scorer in the National Hockey League, because that's how he was paid. And that's a great line, because he got paid the high end of a 20-goal scorer. There's no question about that. But I disagree with Brian Burke saying that the Leafs got killed on this, because, again, why don't I go back and look at what Brian Burke did with, like, TJ Brody and a few of his contracts? I mean, I just think you look at this and you say, all right, the Leafs are going to use him for the rest of the year because they hope to make the Cup. That's why they got Tavares. The minute something goes awry from that and they're looking for cap space, William Nylander's gone.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Peter.
Maybe. I mean, maybe not. My point is with the contract value is what was going on for November, October, and let's say 3 months, September, that they were so far apart that they couldn't arrive at this sooner. There's a backstory here, and someone like Elliot Friedman will dig in and find a little more. Some things will come out in this. But
the dad's deal with.
I mean, if you like, they take the front loaded hit in the first year, fine. The second, years 5, 2 through 6 are relatively stable, depending on how you want to move those signing bonuses, right?
Right.
The July signing bonus is what gets them traded. They'll pay the bonus on the first, and on the second, teams will come calling.
Well, okay, let me just quote this, because Pierre LeBrun was in at the Board of Governors meeting and did an article for The Athletic, and he quoted an Eastern Conference team executive, and I agree wholeheartedly with this point of view. Now, there were other agents. This was sort of like who won, who lost in this situation, and I think you can make arguments either way, and it's basically a waste of time because the contract is signed. So what the hell is the point? But this is where. I agree. He says short term, the contract, it was good for both. But on July 2nd, 2019, the bonus makes me think we'll see a trade after it is paid. Both sides seem not to want to cave, and $6.9 million per season was the one that they could both live with. I'm surprised it didn't get done sooner. Now, what he's talking about is year 2 of this deal. The base salary, the cap hit is 6.9. The salary is $9 million, and the bonus due July 1st is 8.3. So basically,
the salary is 1.7 or
no
700,000.
700,000.
Yeah,
so
and the bonus is 8.3.
So basically, you can go, if you're Kyle Dubas, you could go to a team and say, okay, obviously we want value for him because he's a valuable player, but we're giving you a year of William Nylander for absolutely friggin' free. Because
it's not free. You still have to have the cap space.
Well, no, but I mean money wise,
absolutely. No, and that's here we go again. You close one door on the salary cap, smart people find another one to open, and lo and behold, Kyle Dubas and it just opened up a major can of worms for the next CBA, because if you're a Winnipeg or an Arizona or even pick a small market team, or Florida, or anyone who doesn't have the coffers of MLSE or the Rangers or Chicago or Montreal, you're now going, how do I compete with contracts where they can just pay $8 million in a signing bonus on July 1st and then trade the guy next year and the team's getting him for free and get rid of their salary cap problem?
Yeah, I
mean, all he did, he exposed a weakness. That's what smart people do. But when you expose it so well, you just raised an issue. So if I'm another general manager, and I'm sitting here going, I got to come up and look at my budget and have $8 million as a signing bonus ready on July 1st now to compete for players. Great. Well, how do I sell my owner on that?
Well,
get it. I'm just saying it could be an issue. Look, it's a market advantage for the Leafs.
Yes.
I would do it too if I'm Dubas and I had basically, a truck full of money sitting at my disposal every time I wanted to do something. That's what you get to do when the playing field's been leveled on how much total you can spend. You just find other ways to spend it. So bravo. But I think there's a battle coming. And if you have an influential person like Brian Burke did on the last CBA to neuter these these long deals so you got them on the back diving if they retired early, like on the Luongos, the Hoses.
Yeah.
There's going to be someone probably making a case on this too, and they should.
Now, Russ, what they may do, and then we'll we'll talk about that when the CBA comes up. But what they might do is they limited the amount of front loading or back loading percentage wise throughout the term of the deal. They may do that for bonuses. They may allow only a certain amount of bonuses per year, or maybe 25% or something like that. And because now, Tavares, I believe his base salary for most of his deal is like $1 million, and he's getting 10 million on July 1st. And the reason I'm so convinced, and anything can change, circumstances can change, but the reason I'm so convinced that Nylander is in a trade posture after July 1st is what happened with Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly, his contract was $8 million for this year. $7 million of it was signing bonus, and the day after the Sabres paid him the signing bonus, they traded him to St. Louis. So this is an opportunity if they need to open up cap space. And I know there are reports that the cap is going up to $83 million. That's not guaranteed. And even if it does, I don't know how the Leafs fit everybody in that they think that they can.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the plan. I mean, Nylander could curtail the plan by becoming an 85-point-a-year guy. He does that, he won't get traded. But if he just, goes out and averages around 60 points a year, they're going to look to trade him. And they're going to be like, all right, look, we've got a bunch of other guys like this. Now, the other part that I disagreed with that other people were saying is, like, he's the sixth or seventh best guy in the team. Like, that's unrealistic and silly. Like that.
This is okay. This is and that Brian Burke said that. And if you look at it right now in terms of importance on the team, it's Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Freddie Anderson, and Morgan Riley. They're all more important. They're all more important than William Nylander.
A goalie's not a player. Goalie gets taken out. I don't count a goalie in that list.
Okay.
He's fourth or fifth on that team, which is what you expect him to be. Like that's normal. He's at the end. When they're done with all these salaries, he'll be behind everybody but Riley in salary, and at some point Riley will and now you get to keep them all.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Flyers choosing a general manager. Chuck Fletcher was rumored to be one of the leading contenders. They went through interviews for. Now, did they interview Nonis? I know that they said they were going to, but I don't know if they actually did.
They never confirmation whether it happened or not, so I don't know.
Yeah, they interviewed Bill Zito and a few others, but in the end, Chuck Fletcher is the new GM. Russ, you were skeptical, and I think rightly so, in terms of him being chosen, but he is now. So what do you think that means for the direction of the Flyers?
I mean, it gives him stability for sure, because he's been in the league and he knows the ins and outs of the league and the ins and outs of trading. The skepticism comes from, will he go there and sort of raid the farm system over time? He might. And the worry from my standpoint is he going to leave the scouting staff the way it is because they have like the second best farm system in hockey, or is it going to change a little and he's going to maybe bring in a few scouts that he likes? If that happens, that could change the complexion of the way the Flyers draft. So I'm looking at it from the prospect standpoint. If you're looking at it from the NHL standpoint, he'll come in, he definitely can make deals. He definitely can make them better, but short-term deals have been what's really plagued the Flyers for years. Hextall did the opposite of that. It's hard to believe that they're that's going to be the telltale sign here. They're looking because there's empty seats. They want to fill the seats, so you're going to look, and they're definitely going to get some sort of star quality established veteran. Wherever that comes from, that's what they're going to do, and they're going to hope to get fans excited. Fletcher will have a press conference tomorrow. He'll try and get everybody excited for that. He says it's a lifelong dream come true to be there. Everything sounds great, but we'll see, because, yes, this is the first outsider since, like, Russ Farwell, but that's not always, the recipe for success. I know Flyers fans recently were looking at that as one of the recipes, but then, they were also looking for that new, fresh outlook guy, and that's not Fletcher.
So think about it this way. They went from the Clark Holmgren era of having reactionary moves, bold moves, short-term fix moves, but they still managed to do some good things as a team. They've got a great farm system. The scouting is working. They've got prospects. They've got picks. They've got everything you need to make deals. What Fletcher needs to think about is he needs to not think short-term and long-term in those polarities. He needs to think, he needs to look at the team and say, I have to make some deals. I have assets to make deals that can give me near-term fixes, not short, near. In that they need to happen near to the problem now, but they have to have long-term stability or viability. It's a different way of looking at it without trying to fix something and say, well, if I can just get this guy, overpay for this guy till the end of the year, I'll fix this problem, or it could fix this problem. No, I need to get the right guy that fixes the near-term problem that's right in my face right now, but I know I can use this guy for next year or the year after. And that's the kind of thing they have to think about and keep with the model that got them successful. So the best thing a GM can do, and it doesn't matter if you're in hockey, basketball, or running an automobile dealership, don't break what's not broken. The scouting department works. It takes a special human being to be what Peter Chiarelli is and break everything that's already broken. Fletcher can't do that. He's got to look at the strengths.
Go ahead, Russ.
They're not going to keep the same model. I can tell you that. Matter of fact, here's the other thing, Peter. Paul Holmgren and Bob Clark are still there.
Yeah.
It's not like they went away. They're still going to have input. So this isn't a complete break from what they were doing before, because the break was that somehow Ron Hextall, if he did shut out Bob, Holmgren and Clark, then that was a complete break. Well, they didn't like that. So now they're going back to what I look at as what they sort of did before, with maybe a hope that they keep all the youngsters going. But again, the team is going to gain some new identity. They've already tried to become tougher in games. So if they go with that route and they say, we want to be faster, bigger, tougher, that's going to fall right back into the old Flyers thing. And I have a feeling they're going there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Peter.
I was just going to say, this sort of the void that's gradually being filled in after the loss of Ed Snyder. You need this. If I'm rebuilding the Flyers, I'm taking a look at what Clark and Homer do, and I say, I've got to actually move one of these guys out and bring in someone totally different. And that person is loyal to me. Their position is loyal to protect this franchise from itself. Because all they've done now is switch a subordinate out and to bring in someone who could be a yes man.
Correct.
And that's very dangerous.
Right. But the thing is, and what Russ was talking about and what you were talking about, Hextall was the break. He was the one that was shutting out Holmgren and shutting out Clark. He was doing it his own way without their input. And now I don't think Chuck Fletcher is going to be a yes man, but Chuck Fletcher is going to be he's going to be a little bit of the Pinocchio to their Geppetto. There's going to be strings pulled.
He's going to be closer to the Flyers way. And that's what I'm saying. If he's adopting the Flyers way and they've had conversations around what that is and if they believe that Ron had put them into a position of strength, it just wasn't putting them into the position of control that the team needed to be in. Fletcher's got to look near term for solutions, but long term and how those solutions carry on and what he can build around them. It's just a different way of thinking. I don't know if he's the guy to do that. But that's the problem. There's too much good going on with the franchise in terms of stability with its farm system, its picks, its everything to upset it so much to get short-term fixes because you don't have a few butts in the sands right now. That's the wrong reactionary model.
But the problem is the entire city is over the fact of rebuilding and
Right.
picks, and they're done with that, right? The Sixers are doing well now. The minute the Mets made a trade for Robinson Cano, Phillies fans were like, where's our trade? So then they went and made that trade for Segura. Now they're like, okay, that's great, but when are we signing Bryce Harper? Like, Phillies fans don't care about any more rebuild or any more being patient. Eagles fans don't want to hear because they want a Super Bowl, even though they may take a step back this year. It's the nice thing to say, Peter, but you got to get the fans to buy into that. And right now, I don't know if they have a large enough base to buy into that.
By the way, I think it's good news for the Seattle franchise, even though they're not going to be on the in the league for another couple of years. That the Mariners are basically tearing apart their franchise and
Yes.
bottoming out like Miami is, because it's probably going to take them 3 or 4 years to get back to any kind of competitive level in the major leagues, and that'll be after Seattle comes into the league.
There was once an after back in the day, and it was featured around the Seattle Mariners. It was really about this, this kid and this girlfriend and his family and his dad being a jerk. But it was in Seattle, and the kid always went to Mariners games, and he called them the lovable losers. That's what they're going to turn back into now. So that does aid Seattle. It does give them a little leg in if they can come out and at least create excitement.
A couple trades over the last few days. We'll touch on them briefly. First one, we mentioned Daniel Sprong as a player that the Penguins might move simply because he was in and out of the lineup, and I think they were looking for defensive help. Well, they traded him to the Anaheim Ducks for Marcus Pettersson. Russ, what did you think of that deal?
I thought it was good for both. I like Pettersson. He is a guy that didn't take that long to develop. He doesn't have fantastic speed, but he has good speed. He's a good puck mover. He is not a high-end offensive guy, but he has some skill. So this is exactly what the Penguins need. Another really good complementary defenseman that could skate a bit. And so they got that. And he's got some good size too. I think he's like 6'2", something like that, 6'3". So that was good. They lose Daniel Sprong, which is a shame because he never really had a chance to find his way in that lineup. They tried him early on, and when it didn't click early on, then he had chances. With Anaheim, he will get more of a shot because they're desperate for offense.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Sprong last year in the AHL. I thought he looked good. I watched him this year in the AHL and thought he looked good. So, there's a point where, what is he, 21?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
21 or 22.
There's a point now where it's going to click for him, and he does have some skill. Look, he's never going to be perfect in his own end. That's, any team's going to find that out. But there's good speed there, and there's a good amount of skill and finesse there. So he could be a nice complementary scorer for them, and that's something that they need, especially if they're going to lose Silfverberg. He may end up walking into that kind of role one day. Right.
Peter, the other trade was a minor deal, but of course in Toronto it made a little bit of news because it was in reaction to the Nylander signing. They had to open up a space on their roster, their 23-man roster, and apparently Kyle Dubas made a promise to Josh Levo last year because Levo sat out most of the season and said, if you're playing regularly, we're going to keep you, and if you are going to be a healthy scratch, we'll try to move you someplace where you can have a good opportunity. And when Nylander signed, they knew he was going to be a healthy scratch, and they traded him to Vancouver for Michael Carcone, who is, and I looked at his, he's a undrafted free agent, a smallish forward who played 2 years in Utica, has got 17 points right now. I mean, Levo, I think, is clearly the better player, but the talk that I heard is that Vancouver, first of all, he's replacing another ex-Leaf, Brendan Leipzig, who got claimed on waivers by LA. But second, he's going to be put in the top 9 almost immediately, and maybe even the top 6, maybe playing with Bo Horvat. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Horvat was quoted actually as saying that he played with Levo in junior. So they know each other. So it makes sense. He was talking about maybe find a little chemistry right off the bat. Mm-hmm. I think Vancouver's the perfect team to do that because they're such a mishmash of what they are. in terms of lines. Green seems to tinker with things all the time. That's one of the reasons Leipzig was moved out. I know a family member of Leipzig who I spoke with yesterday and said he's wasn't very happy there, and he had some things he'll probably keep off the record to say about some of the situations he found himself in.
Right.
But needless to say, it was a bit of a it was a welcome relief to be waived, and he knew he was going to get picked up apparently. So fresh start for him. But again, Brendan Leipzig also has to look at how many fresh starts are you going to get.
Right.
Right. This is
15. Nashville, Toronto, Vegas, Vancouver, LA.
Yeah. Like there's a few guys who bounce around, but eventually you there's no bounce left in you. You eventually just stay down. And and I hope he can put something together with LA. I mean, God knows if he can't get an opportunity with LA, that should be the writing on the wall.
Go ahead, Russ.
But never underestimate Willie Desjardins.
No, I was going to say, but look at Vancouver, how they get guys off the scrap heap, and they've been able to do it and really get decent production out of them. You go with like Marcus Granlund, you go with there's a lot of players that we've talked about. I forget the guy's name from Calgary.
Berchi.
Ben Berchi. I mean, they've picked up some really useful role players who pop in, 10, 15 goals. And Levo can certainly pop in 15 goals with a decent amount of ice time. That's good for that team because
it is.
They have high-end guys in Besser and Pedersen. You need to fill it in, sprinkle it in with those other guys who could still move a little bit and aren't like the old-fashioned muckers and grinders. You don't need those. You got Horvat.
You're better off getting Levo on the cheap than you are finding another Louis Eriksson.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the waiver wire has been interesting the last week. You had Zykov getting claimed by Edmonton. You have LA picking up Nikita Scherbak and now Leipzig. Yeah. I mean, I actually think these are good opportunities for these players. I don't know why Zykov didn't play more in Carolina with their inability to score, but they just didn't seem to want to play him.
That's the big thing here, Mike. That's something I've noticed in the last week or so. Just imagine if they didn't. Just imagine where would their season even be right now if the Leafs didn't waive Curtis McElhinney? Like, where would their season even be? And even now, there may not even be a playoff team, even with Curtis McElhinney winning. That is the bizarre team right now that Carolina is. And I got to say, Rob Brind'Amour, no offense to him, I don't think it was going to be a great year for him. I just think it's roster construction, and that roster, I think, is still a mess.
Yeah, it is. No, the last thing I want to touch. Go ahead.
Thing just came to mind. In a game the other day, in the third period, like they brought up Jake Bean, and he had like 2 shifts in the third period.
Yeah, I was almost like, were they calling him up as a showcase or something like that? I mean, could it be? I mean, I doubt it because he's a high regarded prospect, unless they have some sort of deal on the.
Listen, Don Waddell showcased Braden Coburn once. Remember that.
Okay. Now, last thing, and we'll have this be a shorter show, and then hopefully have everybody back tomorrow. Tom Wilson, we talked about it on Friday night, Russ. Soon after the incident between where he elbowed Sene from the Devils, and it ended up him not even getting no hearing, no fine, no nothing. And, I've heard commentary about it saying, well, now it's being sort of discriminatory towards Tom Wilson because now, he's being late. It's Tom Wilson. So anytime he hits, this hit. Okay. The reason he didn't get suspended was because it did not violate Rule 48. He did not target the head. He did not hit the head. But if you don't think he was trying to hit the head, just watch the replay.
Yeah.
Because
what's funny? In that situation where he was getting out skated, how about just trying to dive and knock the puck out or try and make a stick play instead of trying to really just, remove a guy from the play? Because that's what he was trying to do. He wasn't trying to hit his head first. I don't care about principal point of contact because at the end of the day, you hit his head, you wiped him out, and it didn't have to go down that way. This isn't a situation where everybody can cry. Well, what was he supposed to do? There was no other way. There were plenty of other ways on that play. Plenty of others.
Peter, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I just don't understand how you make an excuse for this, and it becomes something that isn't a suspension of some sort. I mean, like repeat offender, repeat this, repeat that. Everything is just like there's no excuse for what he did, and that sort of. I just don't know how you arrive at this. He came barreling in from behind and nailed a guy face down into the ice without any intention to play, without any effort. We can't worry about intention to play the puck. His stick wasn't out. The puck was gone. There was no possible way. It was horrendous charging at the very best,
right?
And an outrageous assault from behind at the worst, and yet nothing. It's just stupid.
Well, the funny thing is I actually think in this instance, the fact that he was suspended 20 games helped him in this respect, because they didn't think that this measured up to that. So if they knew if they were going to have to call him in on a hearing, that the next step was a 30-game suspension, and they didn't think this was worthy of something that heavy. So he gets away with nothing because it wasn't as bad as the Sundqvist hit. That's what I think it was. And this is the thing. He hasn't learned his lesson. He hasn't at all. For everybody who thinks he's a smart player, everything, all this talk about during the summer, he was talking to referees that didn't, to learn how to hit cleaner. And, he won OHL awards for being a clean hitter or whatever bull crap. I don't care. He took out Sundqvist during the preseason. He got suspended. It got lowered by an arbitrator. And this time, then he clearly hasn't learned his lesson, and he's going to do it again. And once he does, he'll get a 30-game suspension, and it'll get lowered to 20. That's the way. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I have to switch gears just for a second, because last night I got home late, but I was watching some of the Edmonton-Dallas game, and I got to tell you, Ken Hitchcock has brought out the worst in Zach Kassian. Zach Kassian's back to being a loose cannon, and that game, there were guys in the penalty box everywhere. And when Dallas just destroyed Edmonton with skill, Edmonton just literally fought back. Like, that was the only thing they could do, was just start to lay these hits. Now, give Dallas credit. Guys like Esa Lindell really laid some hard checks. But I'm telling you, that game just got ugly because Edmonton was totally outclassed. Like, it wasn't going to last with Koskinen in net. It never was going to. Mm-hmm. And now Hitchcock has to sort of look at this and say, did I sort of lose control here playing against my old team? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, and on top of that, McDavid wasn't in the lineup because I think he had the flu or something like that. So they were behind the 8 ball to start with. And,
I mean, again, you're so thin on defense, you got to stop Darnell Nurse from fighting. You can't really afford to lose him.
Yeah, I mean, I believe now they're 4-2-1 under Hitchcock, Peter. So they're having a little bit of success, but at what price? I mean, honestly, their games, they're not playing like the Oilers were in terms of, they have offense. They're playing really like, cards close to the vest. If you have to play that way, with that team, with their, I think, lack of, lack of depth on the blue line, and I don't think their forwards are exactly demons defensively. I don't think you can win consistently, but that's what Hitchcock is going to try to do with them. Yeah,
that's exactly what he's going to try and do. And who knows if Ken Hitchcock's going to be there after the end of the season. I mean, he probably doesn't even know. So
nobody knows. Nobody knows,
right? So what does he have to lose by trying anything? He's there to be the wolf and just clean this mess up the best he can, right, and move on and buy Chiarelli some time. Well, if this is the way he's going to do it, and I'm Peter Shirley. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? Because this isn't going to work. Like, you can't keep doing what happened last night. Like, that's not going to, like, it
was the last act of a desperate man. And I that's what I think. It's like, he had a short window. It was either stay with McClellan and get fired with him at the end of the year, or roll the dice that Hitchcock could come in and change things and make the playoffs and take him off the back burner, or take him off the burner, because he was on basically get ready to get roasted. But all right, we'll stop it there, and we'll resume tomorrow. We'll have plenty of things to talk about. An exciting game that I'm going to tonight: the Sabres and Leafs at the KeyBank Center. The great QEW rivalry, which is completely one way, because the Leafs, in 108 games in Buffalo since 1970, have won 30. So if you're betting the Leafs Sabres, I would not bet the Leafs tonight. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But for Russ Cohen, for Peter Tessier, I'm Mike Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.